Hello again YouTube, and welcome back to Just Get a Tesla. And on this week's video, I'm hoping that I can answer a question which comes up quite a lot in the comments that I receive on other videos. In short, what's it like living with a Tesla? So I've been thinking about making this video for a little while. I've got a whiteboard in the office with both a release schedule of videos that I've already shot or am shooting, as well as some ideas for future content. And I've had living with a Tesla on there for quite a while. So why haven't I shot it yet? Well, I think it's about trying to understand what the people who don't have a Tesla, so might be interested in this video, are concerned about, or what they're thinking, or what the issues are. So I spend quite a bit of time reading on a variety of different forums, from petrolhead websites like PistonHeads through various EV or FEV owners forums, trying to basically get a feel for the kind of concerns that people have got about EV adoption. So I'm recording this in the middle of May 2024, and at the moment there seems to be quite a lot of, frankly, self-breeding headlines out there about how EV adoption is slowing down. So you have got everything from docksides full of imported Chinese EVs that nobody wants, through to Tesla and all of the other manufacturers slashing prices because they're desperate for sales, through to all of the usual fear, uncertainty and doubt about the fact that nobody ever wants an EV, therefore none of the chargers are worth installing because no one's going to use them, and all of the chargers are full and you go into queue, and your battery will be dead within 5-6 years and you're going to have to buy a new one, and the battery is going to set on fire and kill you, and it's all contradictory nonsense, to be brutally honest, and it's more for entertainment value now than I think being annoyed by it. But for the people who don't really get it, for the people who just think that, you know, a car is an car, it's their transport, there's some fundamental fears that a lot of this is driving. So I thought, let's do a video that talks about, well, what is it like just living with a Tesla, or frankly any EV? And let's start off with the obvious question, which is range and the battery and how far it can go and what that's like. If you have got the ability to plug something into your house on the outside, okay, so whether that is that you have got a driveway or a garage or accessible parking where you can run a cable, then you can have an EV with no problem at all. The beauty of an EV compared to a petrol or diesel car is that it charges up whilst you sleep. And there are so many options out there for electricity tariffs where it will cost you literally buttons to do so. So a car that refuels itself while you're dreaming and does so at the cheapest possible prices, which means that your pence per mile for driving is microscopic, surely that's got to be something that an awful lot of people would be interested in if they could get past the FUD. And I understand range anxiety, okay? If you think I need to be able to have a car that goes as far as my current car, otherwise it's going to be awful, then sure, you might be thinking there's a problem. But what I would say to you is, think about your normal use of your car. How far do you actually drive on a normal day? It isn't actually that far. As I understand it from all of the statistics, the average journey length in the UK is still less than 10 miles. Now, you don't have to be good at maths to think that less than 10 miles for the average trip means any EV is suitable for most people most of the time, because it's just straightforward and simple. It doesn't matter how many miles your petrol car can go, because if you think about it, the vast majority of the time you do a tiny fraction of that range. And what's more, you can't refuel your petrol or diesel car while you sleep. Okay, so maybe it only takes you 5 minutes. The reality is, for a lot of people, it's still a faff, and it's still a bit mungy, having to put gloves on to be able to not pick up that smell on your hands. And okay, I didn't used to do the gloves, and you might be watching saying, well, I never do either, but people obviously do, because there are gloves at every single filling station. So the smell, the mess, the faff, all of the rest of it, and then you've got the rather basic problem that the price of petrol is quite high, and it's been much higher, but it's still a significant cost. So a running cost daily of an EV charged at home on an overnight tariff, and you literally can take an axe to the amount of money you spend with your AN car getting around places. The next one, of course, is, well, what if I have to do longer trips? And the reality here is, charging is still there, okay? You absolutely can drive up and down the country in any EV without a faff, okay? Yes, Tesla superchargers are cheaper and generally faster than practically everybody else's, but that doesn't mean that other cars can't be driven up and down the country, because of course they are, and that happens every single day. And the higher cost of roadside fast charging is basically the same as the higher cost of petrol at motorway services or roadside filling stations versus a supermarket. You pay a premium for the convenience. It's called capitalism, okay? So unless you are going up and down the motorway all day every day, then that's never going to be a concern, because on the odd occasion that you actually do it, you just pay the little bit of a premium and off you go. And for most people, on most longer trips, you take a stop after a couple of hours. And I know there are some maniacs out there who say, well, I never do. I always do 800 miles without a stop and I wee into a bottle. People do not. Motorway service stations are busy. Their car parks are full of people taking a stop because they want to take a stop. And while you're doing so, in an EV, you are refueling the car. And you can't do that with petrol and diesel. Okay, so it might only take you an additional 5 minutes to go to the fuel station and to stick some more fuel in, but it's still an additional 5 minutes. So EVs are certainly cheaper for most people on a pence per mile basis, and given that you can fuel the thing up while you sleep for most people, it's going to be quicker as well. There is a cost, of course, and this is the bit that most people talk about when it comes to the cost of owning an EV, and it seems to be exercising quite a lot of people at the moment, which is EVs are both high cost in that they cost more than an equivalent petrol or diesel car, and also worthless. And again, it's the usual FUD where what they're saying makes no sense if you actually stop and think, but EVs are simultaneously too expensive and too cheap. Here's the reality. The market is shifting and an awful lot of new cars are coming onto the market. Supply outstrips demand and the price goes down. What that means is there are some absolute bargains out there if you want to buy a lightly used EV. Bargains, okay? And markets going up and down as demand outstrips supply and vice versa. That's just how markets work. So the car I had before this was a Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid, okay? And I owned that car for a year and a half, actually, and I put 20-odd thousand miles on it, more than doubled its mileage, and that car depreciated by less than £1,000. That means absolutely nothing, okay? Nothing in terms of the depreciation rates of either petrol or PHEVs. It was just a freak of the market at the time. The car before that was a Volvo diesel, which I bought pre-registered from dealers who had basically ticked too many options boxes and couldn't shift it. And that car was already a 1/3 saving over list price when I bought it with delivery miles on it. And I drove it for a couple of years and put 20,000 miles on it, and it lost half of its value again. It had depreciated by just over 2/3 in less than 3 years. And again, that means nothing at all to the depreciation rates of diesel. It was just the market conditions at the time. So the people freaking out about EV prices because at the moment suppliers outstrip demand, well guys, things go up and down. We had a 2014 Nissan Leaf, and 3 years in we decided to sell it because the used prices were fairly poor. Had we bought it a couple of years on, used prices had gone shooting up, and it was actually worth more in 2019 than it was in 2017. Prices go up and down. So if you buy a car and keep it in the long term, depreciation doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't matter what the notional value is of something you are not going to sell, right? I get people shouting at me about when I do costs videos, and they say, what's the depreciation on your Tesla? And I'm like, I'm not selling it, so I haven't incurred any. Yeah? I haven't lost any value because I haven't sold it, and I'm not about to sell it, and how much it might be worth now if I did sell it doesn't matter because I'm not selling it. So it's all a bit crackers, and frankly, the way to get around that completely, or to get around the fact that the technology is evolving and the costs are a bit uncertain, is lease it. There are some spectacular leasing deals available for EVs, and Tesla have just done one at the moment where you can a Model Y on something like 0.5% interest rate. Absolutely bonkers deal. Okay, so there are some spectacular deals out there. If you don't want to buy it, just rent it. Somebody else's risk then, and that's the same for any other car. Really, we shouldn't be buying cars, we should just be leasing them, but hey, whatever. And insurance is, of course, the final piece of the cost equation. And you know what? This is quite an expensive car to insure, but that's because it's in Group 48. There's only 2 higher groups, right? It's not expensive to insure because it's an EV or because it's a Tesla. It's expensive to insure because it's got nearly 500 horsepower. That's why it's expensive. If you go and look at a normal EV, so look at a Stellantis vehicle, Vauxhall Corsa or something like that, the insurance on that is not stupid, okay? And here's the point. A lot of the stuff that people say about why the insurance is so high ignores the fact that the insurance for petrol and diesel cars has also shot up. And when the insurance industry looked at the statistics of everybody's insurance, they found that the increase in cost for petrol and diesel was higher than it was for electric. So all of the people saying that electric is more expensive because it costs more to repair are simply ignoring reality as dictated by the insurance industry. It isn't true. But nice stuff costs money, whether you are buying an EV or whatever you're buying, right? Nice stuff costs money. Make sure you can afford it. So we've done all of the money stuff. Now let's talk about the lifestyle stuff, okay? If you've never driven an electric car, a car that is powered by an electric motor, then you've missed out. Because, how can I put this? An electric motor is the best drivetrain you will ever have, okay? Lots of people like nice gearboxes, whether it's a good chunky manual box or a nice efficient, automatic ZF 8-speed that you get in BMWs and things like that. An electric motor is the best gearbox you've ever had because there is no gearbox. There is no gears. It is literally a single speed. All of the power available all of the time at any speed, and it delivers it seamlessly. Genuinely, once you've had an electric motor, you don't want to go back. And manufacturers have noticed this, and they're taking the feedback from consumers. Look at Nissan with their e-Power system, where the engine is literally disconnected completely from the wheels. It is there purely to act as a generator to feed electricity through a battery pack into an electric motor. They basically have said, let's take the internal combustion engine and get it so that, well, it basically drives via a motor. They've said, let's take an internal combustion engine and make it drive like an EV. And some people have said, hey, that's crazy. I disagree. I entirely understand it. It's just a better way to drive. And also, from an efficiency perspective, you are, instead of most of the energy that you are creating by burning your petrol and diesel being lost in mechanical loss, okay, or in heat, or all of the other inefficiencies in that kind of powertrain. Instead of that, most of the power is transmitted to the road, and also all of the kinetic energy which you have when you are slowing down, you recuperate and feed back in to be able to make it even more efficient. So it's just a better drivetrain for everybody. If you're driving around in a city, something like that, then it really is better, because one pedal driving just makes it completely effortless. Literally, you don't touch the brake, you just use the throttle. Push it to go, lift it to stop, okay? And because you are going stop-start in traffic, you're not having to have your engine stopping and starting all the time. A lot of people, myself included, hated stop-start technology. But it's there for a reason, which is let's not be burning fuel and wasting it. But the other point is, if you're driving petrol or diesel on these shorter trips, so less than 10 miles, that is woefully inefficient, because the engine has barely got itself warmed up before you're shutting it down again. If it's a diesel, you're going to kill it, right? You absolutely have to do longer trips to let the thing you'll regenerate the particulates filter and things like that. You don't have those problems in an EV. You just don't. So for anyone who does these shorter trips on a regular basis, it's just better. I really should touch on why Tesla. So if you're going to do an EV and you've been persuaded on it, why Tesla? Well, okay, let's be entirely honest about this. Tesla do not make enough sizes and shapes of cars currently in the UK to be an option for everybody. In fact, for a lot of people, they're a cracker's option, because you can get a mid-size saloon or you can get a bigger crossover like this Model Y and nothing else. So if you want a smaller car, city car, something like that, you can't get a Tesla. But if you can, Tesla's great. And Tesla's great for a whole load of reasons. Number one, it has got the best drivetrain of all of them. Hyundai, Kia, they're really efficient as well, but Tesla just about beats it. In terms of efficiency and the amount of energy that's used to actually push the vehicle along, just like in a petrol engine, where they're not all as efficient as each other, some are better than others. And Tesla have absolutely smashed it. So if you want the most efficient car going, basically Tesla, and if you can't do Tesla, Hyundai, Kia. Okay? The second one is the charging network. So if you are going on longer trips, then Tesla is the best option comfortably by a country mile, because it's got faster and cheaper chargers which are wholly integrated into navigation and the way that the car actually plans trips. It is seamless, it is effortless, and it's cheaper than everybody else's. And I think a really important thing that doesn't really get talked about a lot is servicing, or the lack of servicing. So I've done 33,000 miles now in this car, and it's not been serviced. And that's not because I've missed the service intervals, it's because there are no service intervals. There are advisory things that it recommends that you do, but to maintain your warranty, you do not have to get this car serviced. And that is simply not the case for most other manufacturers. We've had other EVs. We had a Hyundai Ioniq EV. And you had to go and take the car to the main dealers to get it serviced. And most of the service items that they do on most cars, you don't have in an EV, because the mechanical gubbins simply aren't there. But they still insist on you bringing it in so that they can not do those things, and then they charge you for it anyway. It's basically a big rip-off, and it's there because most of the manufacturers make most of their money from servicing. Their dealer network makes its money from servicing. It's not really making a vast amount of commission from selling new cars. I mean, most of them having to discount anything new to get it out the door, whether it's an EV or not. So they're making their money from servicing. And what do you do if you've built a car that doesn't need servicing? So you still have to get your Vauxhall Corsa E serviced, even though it doesn't need it. And that's the kind of thing that actually, on a consumer level, drives me a bit nuts. So Tesla, don't bother. Don't service it. Just get the air filter changed now and then when it tells you to. Just get them to check the suspension now and then when they want you to. That's all you need to do. And that is a huge, 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 huge advantage. I think the other thing for me in Tesla, and look, people are going to disagree. Tesla are cool, right? Tesla are this aspirational lifestyle, hey, just get a Tesla, right? You wouldn't say, hey, just get a, I don't know, GWM Aura. I'm sure they're fine, but there's no one out there going, hey, I really want one of those. The way that Audi and Mercedes and BMW became, desirable vehicles and ubiquitous, I think Tesla is that for EVs. Other people will disagree, but for me, this is the car to get. One final point to close this off. I've just videoed myself plugging into the supercharger here in Aberdeen because quite a few people post comments on my videos saying, you seem to be spending a lot of your time charging, or you seem to be spending a lot of time worried about charging or thinking about charging. No, I'm running a YouTube channel, which means that I have to video myself doing things specifically for the video, or talking about something specifically for the video, or to explain it for people who are not necessarily understanding how charging works. The vast majority of the time, I'm not hooked up to a charger. I am not thinking about charging. I am not worried at all about charging. And neither will you be. If you really are thinking about getting an EV or just getting a Tesla, it will perform exactly the same way as your current petrol or diesel car does in almost any circumstance. And that's just the nature of this. This, despite the technology, despite the batteries and the electric motor and all the rest of it, this is a car. If you're used to owning a car or leasing a car, using a car, think about the trips that you do and where you go and how long they are, and then think about what difference having an EV would make. And once you push all of the fear, uncertainty, of doubt out of the way, the reality is that practically everybody could switch to an EV right now, today, in May 2024. What are you waiting for? From a lifestyle perspective, it's a bit of a no-brainer. And on that thoughtful note, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you back here very soon, not hooked up to a supercharger, on Just Get a Tesla.